climate conversations happening all around the world. This has started, I think, on the 6th of November, and the last one will be on the 18th of November. And I really look forward to seeing what comes out of those conversations. Just to give you a bit of a background as to who we are, the Global Entrepreneurship Network is a platform of professionals all around the world. Their chapters are currently active in around 200 countries around the world. And Global Entrepreneurship Week is a celebration of entrepreneurs. So the goal is to activate and inspire entrepreneurship. And I took this as an opportunity to start conversations around zero waste. While people are unleashing ideas around innovation and all sorts of ideas around the world, I am unleashing ideas around a zero waste economy. I believe it's about time. I have not seen enough conversations going on, and not only just conversations, but also practical, actionable steps as to what are we doing to get ourselves sustainable? Because shocking stats around unemployment rates, about South Africa having one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world. Things like that say to me that the youth, as the youth, we struggle to sustain ourselves. And it's about time we came up with different types of solutions to sort this whole issue out. And we can do so by just creating communities, by supporting one another, creating networks with resources and tools. And it's one of the reasons why I really love the Global Entrepreneurship Network. So just to give you a bit of a rundown as to what you can expect today. I've just done an intro as to who I am and the organizations that I work with. And I'll hand over to our panelists. Ridhwana, Jess, Carolyn, Yomi, thank you so much for joining in and making this a really impactful conversation. What I'm hoping that we do is that we not only converse around what the ideas are around curbing textile waste, not just to have conversations. I want us to come out with practical, actionable steps for people who would want to come up with business ideas, for people at home who would like to know what to do with their clothes. How can they keep their clothes sustainable, and how they can get rid of their textile waste safely, how they can avoid their clothes getting to a point where they are actually textile waste. And actually I'm starting to dislike the word waste. I believe every single material that we have should be a resource, and nothing should end up as waste, because waste simply means that we wasted it, right? Like we're never going to use it again. So I would like for us to have practical conversations about how we can turn waste, textile waste, into resources. And I have questions for you. So in the meantime, while I figure out how to move my slide here, I'm going to hand it over to you, ladies, so you can introduce yourselves. Please feel free to take the floor. I'll start with you, Jess. Okay, I think Jess has probably like gotten up from her chair. Next, I'll ask Carolyn. Carolyn, please introduce yourself and please put on your video. This is while I try and figure out how to move this presentation of mine.
Jess, do you want to go ahead? I see you are there.
No, please go ahead. I was trying to tell someone outside. Someone just started cutting the lawn. So I needed to tell them to just give me an hour. So go ahead, Colleen, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Carlin Fratelli Davies, and I'm an environmental lawyer and mining, but I do more environmental work at the moment at a law firm called ENS Africa. It's in Sandton, and it's a full suite law firm which does tax and corporate law, and I've been there for 14 years. And my brief history, I actually wanted to study fashion design, and my teacher mother said no. So I studied law, and over lockdown and over the pandemic, I saw a connection between what I've been doing for 14 years in the environmental space and the fashion industry, which I'm passionate about, and sort of bridging and bringing those two aspects together and being a part of circularity, zero waste, regenerative conversations, and seeing what role I can play. I share similar thoughts with Priti on the fact that we just have so much potential from an employment perspective, and just our legal system as well can really form a great basis for jumping ahead in what Europe and America have gone through, and really setting the scene for a great zero waste, circular, regenerative fashion industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, Carlin. So for once feel like not the cleverest person in the room. This entire week I've been learning a lot. So I feel honored that you ladies have taken the time to join in. So thank you so much. That is so awesome to have you on board. Jess, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Priti, and thank you so much for the invite. My name is Jessica Ramushaba. I'm a stylist. I have a long history in working in the fashion industry in South Africa with a couple of magazines. I think that's my entry to fashion. I have a honors degree in fashion from Stadio, and I'm also a founder of Fawura, which pretty much is a consultancy where we teach women how to live consciously through their wardrobes, and we're hoping that that will expand in other areas of their lives. I'm passionate about the idea that, as someone who's a previous fashion editor, I love fashion, and I think I'm like one of those perfect voices from someone who enjoys fashion terribly, but at the same time understands the impact that it has on environment, and trying to teach women on how they can relate to their wardrobe, connect to their wardrobes, and the relationship they should be forming going forward. I think that part of my experience in advising people, my readers, during my time in the magazine, I think it's amazing how from there to where we are now, it's like two different worlds. And I feel like I'm the perfect person to take them through that journey, because I understand the struggles of why people love clothes and what clothes does for them. So we're very passionate about that at Fawura, and I think that is what is behind the inspiration of what we do at Fawura, just teaching people how to just live consciously through your wardrobe.
Thank you very much. So awesome to meet you. I feel like I have the most horrible sense of style, and I'll be coming to you for consultation. Yeah, yay. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Ridhwana?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ridhwana, and firstly, thank you for the invitation. It's such an honor to be invited to panels like this, because I think that the more we talk about issues, the more we can find the innovation sitting somewhere, to fix problems that we have. But anyway, so I am a design consultant. I work in the footwear space, primarily from a product point of view, and I am absolutely driven by the idea that design can fix so many problems. I'm a circular economy specialist, and my specialization lies within understanding how to create fashion and footwear that is better for people and the planet. I usually like to turn that around. I like to say first for the planet and then for people. But the truth is that in the triangle of the 3 Ps, I like to put them on the same sort of category because it makes sense that way. I have worked in many countries globally, and currently I am working towards creating educational programs for fashion institutions that will allow them to teach footwear design, but footwear design from sort of a point of view on how do we maximize what we already have, but how also do we not add to the problem of overconsumption? So it's better design for better consumption habits. And that's what I'm hoping to teach. And it starts actually from next year. So yeah, I am incredibly passionate about the idea of circular economy, not because it's a buzzword and it's been buzzing around for a couple of years now, but because I truly believe that it is one of the tools that we as communities have to recreate a better world for ourselves. And I know that it sounds a little bit pie in the sky to most people who've never even heard the term circular economy, but truly as Africans, we've been engaged in the circular economy for the longest time possible. So yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ridhwana. Next on the panel, I think here, Ridhwana, you are the only person I've met in person. So Ridhwana and I met in the Circular Economy Incubator program that was about a year long. It was a year or 18 months, Ridhwana?
18 months.
18, yeah, I think 18 months.
Yeah.
By an organization called WomHub. It happened between 2020 and 2021. I think we've been, no, we finished this year. No?
We finished the beginning of this year. You're quite right. Actually, it was 20, what are we in? We're in 2022. So it was 21, 22. It feels like a really long time ago, but yeah, really, like props to WomHub. It was an amazing program.
It was incredible, yeah. And in that program, it was for the first time I felt like I met a group of people who spoke the same language that I did and cared as much as I do about the people around me, well, my community, and how they are affected by the climate change and how we handle our resources and how clever we are about using the tools we have to sustain ourselves. So for the first time, the idea of zero waste and sustainability and the circular economy, all those conversations for the first time didn't feel like gibberish. So we all spoke the same language and I enjoyed it. And it was like probably one of the best times of my life. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here, actually. So deeply appreciate you, Ridhwana, and super excited for what lies ahead.
Same.
Yeah, thank you. So next in the panel is Yomi. Yomi is also like just somebody who is very special to me, one of the people that I'll be collaborating with to build my empire. So Yomi, please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, Priti, once again. And it's been very, very interesting listening to all the panelists. And I'll pick up from what Ridhwana just said. We as Africans really, truly have been practicing circular economy for the longest time ever. I mean, we are that. In my family, for example, you would pass down clothes, you would share, share things. So, but let me go back before I get excited. Let me go back to introducing myself. My name is Yomi, yes, and currently I work with Circular Economy Innovation Partnership. But before then, I've been running my business for about 7 years in the leather industry. And before then, I was sorry, I'm in a busy cafe. I was running a children's footwear manufacturing and retail business. When I stopped that, I went on to leather bags, that is stroller. And but what I did with the shoes was to start a charity where we give out shoes to less privileged children. So in all of this, I've always thought of the best way to use my skills and harness what I have to help the people around me. Currently, like I said, I'm working at Circular Economy Innovation Partnership, and in this role, we're just partnering with other circular economy businesses to create a better, bigger ecosystem around us. Personally, also, I'm looking to start a textile recycling company which is where Pretty and I met, as well. So we are looking to build this ecosystem where truly it's no longer waste but a resource. And when we have that at the back of our minds, everything around us will become a resource. We start from the family, we start from our communities, and we start thinking and reshaping and rethinking how we engage with textiles and everything around us. So I think I had an event on the 6th of October, and there was this dress that couldn't fit me anymore. You know how we are as we're getting older. It couldn't fit me anymore. And it was like an A-line dress. And I thought, you know what, being A-line is the upper that couldn't fit me, but the lower skirt could fit me. So I had them take off the upper part and they put a band on the waistline, and voila, I had the skirt. So it didn't go to waste, mainly because I really love the dress. And secondly, I'm like, we need to start thinking better of how to do these things. Yes, so while half of it, the upper part, I couldn't do anything, but at least I was able to save the major part of the dress. So little ways like this is how I think we can practically change our relationship with not just textiles, with everything around us to build a better, a more sustainable practice of doing things going forward. Thank you, Pretty, once again for inviting me. I am so looking forward to hearing what the other speakers have to say. I'm already interested and very excited. So I hand over to you once again.
Welcome. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Yomi. Next on the panel, we have Caroline. Caroline, did you have an opportunity to speak? I'm sorry, I think I've been so distracted with this presentation. So if you haven't introduced yourself, please go ahead.
No problem. I did introduce myself, but I wanted to add, as everyone said, thank you so much for including me. I feel like I've also found my people that just speak the same language. So just echoing what everyone says, and also fully agree that Africa has been practicing circularity, which always shocks me how they speak about throwing clothes away in Europe and America. I don't understand it. So just wanted to add that. And I think it's Oscar who still has to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you. Oscar, please go ahead. Welcome.
Hello.
Oscar, when you are ready, you can just raise your hand. But in the meantime, I'm gonna just go ahead and start the program. Right? When your mic is ready, please just go ahead and raise your hand, and you can introduce yourself. So I'm gonna go on and introduce the topic. So today we are talking about sustainability in the textile and apparel industry. And the idea that I'm proposing here is that the current system for producing, distributing, and using clothing operates on a predominantly take, make, dispose model. A new textiles economy based on circular economy principles would lead to better outcomes. Now, I have a few questions that I would like for us to ponder on, which would actually perhaps guide us and get us to the next steps towards practical, actionable steps to in sustainable textiles and apparel and or the fashion industry. Oscar, I see that you are good. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Oscar. Yes.
Yeah. My name is Oscar Ndasenga, and I'm a founder of Ecofit Textile that is specialized into ecological fiber production from agro-wasta, especially in the banana stems and banana leaves. So we are trying to help the textile and the fashion industry to find other way or other resource of green fiber for reserve our planet and having the product that are biodegradable, recyclable, and reusable.
Nice. Oscar, what's the name of your company again? Okay, you can send us the name of your company, the links to your work, and everything in the chat, because it seems like you this quite busy day in your background. Otherwise, if I have forgotten anyone, I do apologize. It would be awesome to see you all in one screen, if I've forgotten anyone, I do apologize. Please go ahead and say hi if I've forgotten to call out your name. Okay, great. Haven't forgotten anyone. Yeah, so that was the idea that I'm, bringing forward. And the questions that I would like to ask each of you panelists is this. What does the idea that each stakeholder in the value chain has a role to play in the way we handle textiles look like? That's the first question. The second question will be, what are the most underexplored opportunities in sustainable textiles, in the sustainable textiles and apparel sector? The third question is, what is required to achieve a truly sustainable and circular textile industry in Africa and South Africa? Those are the three questions that I would like for us to really dive into. And I'm going to call you in no particular order, but just the way I'm seeing you on my screen. And so the first panelist on my screen is Caroline. Next person is Yomi. Third person is Ridhwana, then Jess, and then it would be Oscar. And I would love to give you an opportunity to answer each question one by one, and I'll call you out as we answer the questions. Is that good?
Great. Okay, so the first question, can I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead. So what does the idea that each stakeholder in the value chain have a role to play look like?
I think for me, it's obviously coming from a legal background, so I don't know the intricacies of textile manufacturing and that. But what I have seen and what I do think will make a big impact is something like a supply chain due diligence. And this is happening in Europe at the moment, where it's in various industries, including the fashion industry, where manufacturers are going to have to ensure that their full supply chain complies with various guidelines and requirements from a sustainability perspective, which obviously touches on the employees that are used, the textiles that are used, and then just governance and transparency. And from my, not knowing the industry extremely well, but just from that perspective, I think that each part of the supply chain definitely has a role to play. And I think it's going to come most likely from government requirements. And before we get there, I think it's brand owners and those who actually make the products. I think they have the control to require more from their supply chain. And something interesting that I heard last night, there was a discussion from a research council in Europe, and I joined. I'm forgetting the name of the organization, but I'll find it. And one point that they made was very interesting. They said that they are looking, it's a company called Gani, instead of offsetting their impact, so they produce various things and collaborate with different companies, they're looking at insetting. And so taking money and using that money for their supply chain to better equip them to comply. So to give them machines that will ensure that they have less of an impact, to help them with their water recycling, that type of thing. And I just found that such an insightful comment, and something that should definitely be discussed more. So I hope that answers your question just from my perspective.
Yes, absolutely. If anything at all, the thing that is needed, I think it's involvement by the entire community and having like guidance, right? So yeah. So, but would anyone like to add anything to Carlin's point? Okay, awesome. Jess, what are your thoughts around the question? What does the idea that each stakeholder has a role to play look like?
I think for me, it's, and I just like Colleen, I think I will also base it on just my experience in the industry. And I think really going back to the basics, I think sometimes we try and complicate. We talk a lot about sustainability and sustainable fashion and circularity so much, and it can almost like just give you a deaf ear where we forget to go back to the basics. And the basics for me is really just really looking at where our textiles come from. We have to go back to tracking where most of the textiles come from. We have to look at, or even government supporting people who are producing textiles from scratch, so that then once you raise that, and most of the retail people or whoever's making clothes in the townships or wherever, they're able to get access, to better fabric. We cannot leave better textile materials to some elite corner somewhere where someone is going to produce that and hope that someone somewhere in the township or in, I don't know, wherever it is, and they're going to make better clothes. At the end of the day, it is, all of us is our struggle. So it can't just only benefit the niche market, I also think that for years, we haven't really taken responsibility over the fabric that is already on the ground, and now we're realizing, and I think that's part of the work that you're doing. We're realizing the importance of what do we do with that, how can stakeholder, just participate in what do we do with all this leftover garments that have just been made, been worn. Everybody pretty much has a wardrobe in the world that they're wearing. And I think that is where, once we change or we track, just what happens to textile from the beginning till the end, I think that's where we can start making that shift, And I think, speaking of stakeholders, it's part of what we do as well at Fashion Revolution, really just participating and spreading the word in terms of people being aware of the fabric and buying better textile. But not only that, also dipping into what Yomi said, those are the things that we're passionate about at Fawura in terms of your clothing. You don't necessarily, just because the top part or the end part doesn't fit, you don't necessarily have to get rid of that. It's more about spending time on, before you discard your garment, what else can you do with it? What purpose can it still serve? Sometimes it all has to just do with really just changing or just changing that fabric to be more multifunctional, and I mean, simple things like, some of the clothes that people normally wear for like dressy occasions, then you take that lower to a much more lower grade, and then you wear that at home, you dress that at home, you're going to visit your mom, you wear that dress that once upon a time used to be so special and so amazing, then you wear that to just go visit a friend, hang out at a friend's house. Just, this is more for on a lower level kind of everyday, what women do or what men do, or whoever wear clothes, or the wearers of clothing. So I think that there's just this, I don't know, we're forgetting to go back to the basics of just really looking at textiles. How did this textile end up here? Where does it come from? Who's making this textile? and what can we do with the textile that currently exists in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess. And that is correct. Like going back to basics without overcomplicating what it is that we're doing or what we're trying to achieve, and having people really think about the source of the product and services that they currently are utilizing. And in this case, just wonder, where does this come from? Who made this? And what process went into this? Like, yeah, really love what Fashion Revolution has been doing. And I really look forward to, again, like a collaboration and just in spreading the word and having people really become aware of these types of things. So thank you so much. Ridhwana, what does the idea that each stakeholder has a role to play look like?
I think that this is a really important question. And you see, there's a rhetoric around it's not my problem once the consumer has it. And for me, that is problematic on several levels, because when we look at value retailers, sort of, you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name names, right? But when we talk about value-based retailers, we're talking about people who have their hands in the pockets of the bulk of our nation. And if Company X has literally netted 78 billion for the financial year last year, do you not think that if they were to change things systematically in their own value chain, that they make their unwitting consumers part of the change that we need to see when we're talking about better consumption? And by saying this, it would mean that you would in essence have to change everything in your value chain, right? But I'm not saying everything has to change all at once, because we are participants in a system, an economic system that has developed over time, and we can't seem to get ourselves out of it because we don't necessarily believe in stewardship, for example, in this country. You can't necessarily say you need to change everything at once, because that's going to eat into the bottom line. And when we're talking to retailers and we're talking to big businesses, you do not want them to even think about a hurt bottom line. But if you think about it, it's necessary to make some kinds of changes. So whether it is sourcing better cotton, or whether it is getting your own product back into store so you can remanufacture, all of these things make sense when we're talking about building better products for better consumers. And every single person in a brand, in a retailer, in a retailer's value chain, every single player is important. So from the places that are growing your cottons, to the places that are dyeing your cottons, to the places that actually need to receive your cottons once it's reached its end of life, every single player has a very important role to play. But we can't change anything in that system if we don't change how designers think about the products that they design. And I'm going to go back to the point that I made when I introduced myself, when I said I think design can solve all problems. I'm not really saying that it can solve all the problems in the world. No, but I am saying when we're talking about fashion, all the problems that we do currently see, it is a design problem. If you're creating a denim jacket and you're not creating it to be lived as something else afterward, you've created a waste problem, and waste is a flaw in design, right? So I think that the simple answer to your question is that each role within that particular value chain is equally important, but each role hangs off each other, and you've got to have this chain of communication where you've got to have 100% transparency throughout it. But if we look at how complex our systems are in retail today, you have to appreciate the fact that these systems existed long before the idea now that we have of better textiles and all. These systems have existed beforehand. It's not going to be fixed like this. We're going to have to encourage retailers and brands to move towards better choices at a pace that is good enough to be acceptable, but also rapid enough to make some changes. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you. It starts with design. So it's very nice that people get ideas and creating things, but if not much thought is placed in where's this thing gonna end up, then you know, you failed essentially, right? So your product will live through its lifespan, but end up somewhere where you don't know and where you haven't thought of. So it starts with design. The circular economy starts with design. Thank you so much.
100%. So, you know, just to chip in here is like one of the questions that I ask myself before I begin any new project, and this is critical to dealing with the clients that I generally deal with, is the question is, what this thing that I'm designing for you, how do you envision its end of life? And most of my clients go, I have no idea. What is end of life? What are you talking about? You have to explain that once, and whether it has reached its end of life because of, you know, what's the thing? It's reached the end of its sort of like desirability, or it's reached the end of its function. Those are two very different things. And once you explain what that particular thing actually means, it's like, oh, well, I don't necessarily, I've spent money making this product. I don't necessarily want it to end up in a landfill or going to a dustbin. And it's that sort of like rejigging your own design thinking process that can help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ridhwana. Carlin says, yes, Ridhwana, this was also a strong point on the webinar I joined last night. The responsibility is on the brand owners to motivate and make the change. Again, fully agree, design is critical. It can also be driven by technology, ingenuity, and creativity, which will result in economic growth and profit. Spot on, Carlin. Thank you so much. Next, Yomi, what are your thoughts?
You know, I can't help but agree totally with what Ridhwana has said. And again, I'll bring practical examples. My brand, Jola, I remember about 2 months ago, I had a customer call me and said, oh, Yomi, you just posted this bag. I want this bag. I have an event this weekend, and this is the shade of blue. And, you know, and I said to her, but I know you have something similar that you bought from me about 2 years ago. Oh, really? And I said, yes, you do. And, you know, you don't have to match blue on blue, the same shade. It can be shades of blue, you know. So I gave her that styling tip. And she ended up not having to buy the bag. And I said to her, please don't get me wrong. I do want to sell. No, don't get me wrong. I'm in the business to make profits and sell. But then also I'm trying to be sustainable. I'm trying to be reasonable about this all. You don't need another shade of blue. You know, you can wear what you currently have. So it does start with design. It starts with the business owner. It starts with, and then another way to look at this is for those designing textiles or clothes, I realized that two-piece clothes, you know, like a skirt and a blouse designed together, or a shirt and trousers, you could always wear them any which way, not just in that combination. So it truly does start with the designer. The responsibility is also on us to because people, not that they don't want to be sustainable, they just don't know sometimes. So we design with the end in mind, or with different multiple purposes in mind, and then we also explain and show them how to do all of this, how to wear this designs and style it in different ways. Then I also think that I've mentioned the two-piece, you know, sorry, I was noting down. The other thing we've done is we've also taught to reduce our, like I said, I'm in a business to make money, yeah, but I'm also being reasonable and sustainable. We were reducing our collections in a year because I thought about it. Okay, I design leather bags and I design, you know, handbags and all of that. And I'm saying, how many bags will a woman carry in a year? Reasonably. You know, while I'm trying to reach out. So rather than saying, okay, this group of people, this is what I'm doing, you know, I'm selling bags. I'm like, I can help you make use of the ones you have in your wardrobe currently that I know about in different ways. So still, again, the onus and the responsibility is on us, the designers, the manufacturers, the retailers, to to explain to our customers, our clients, how best to expand the life of what they have currently, rather than keep on buying and buying and buying. And then if it's for some people as well, it's a case of, oh, I'm not feeling happy today, I need a little bit of retail therapy. Okay, fine, that's also good. It's good to have retail therapy, but just at the same time, it's also good to empty your wardrobe. That's another good therapy. When I say empty it, I don't mean throw it into the dustbin or landfill. I mean, look for, if it's members of your community, members of your family, your church, your whatever community you belong, there are people that still need these things. Find a way to have a party, or okay, I throw my wardrobe open in this section, so there are other ways to do this, and it's really still therapeutic. So that's where I think we can solve it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Would anyone like to engage with Yomi's point? If you do, please go ahead.
I would like to add on what Ridhwana said. I think what she said is like a really critical point, but I also think that we also have to find a way of how we can add the consumer into the whole mix, because it's also just as important to almost understand what the consumer, what is it about fast fashion that consumer enjoys, so that then the designers who want to alter their designs, then they're able to have that relationship to be able to produce whatever it is that they want to produce. Point being that designers can design all clothing is, but as long as we don't understand what the consumers really love, enjoy about fast fashion, then we're just not really touching on what we're supposed to be. So also add that to that mix. So design and consumer relationship with their clothing. I think it's very important, particularly now at this time, because fast fashion is like literally, obviously, as we know, has taken over the entire space, and you can't compete with that system. So I think for small brands that are trying to work on that design, work on those basics that Ridhwana is talking about, I think it's also important, once you've done the design, then see how you can speak to your customer, to really understand what is it that they love and what is it that they enjoy.
Thank you.
I wanted to say something here, Priti.
Yes.
Is that, Henry Ford said that if he had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said they would have wanted faster horses, right? So consumers don't know what they don't know. And I feel that sometimes the easiest way to win is to not let consumers know that they are buying something that is inherently better for the planet and then making a big sing-song about it, right? Like when we look at sustainable fashion right now, it's crazy expensive and it's out of the reach of the average South African, right? But if value-based retail, I think we've kind of veered off the track just a little bit, but I just wanted to say that sometimes the process of tapping into what your market wants too much, especially when it comes to the sustainability conversation and the circularity conversation, is that you can be led down the path of, I don't know, terrible unintended consequences, which you would not have foreseen. So giving consumers what you think is best for sustainability for your brand means that consumers, if they love your brand, will buy it. If your brand speaks to them, they will buy it, right? So yeah, that's just a thought that I'd like to put out there.
Thank you. I like the point about Henry Ford. I use it all the time. Like if he asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So yeah, thank you. Carlin, you'd like to add something?
Yes, thank you. I was just adding in the notes that this was another point by Eleonora. She's at BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, and she gave the actual numbers on this. And 80% of consumers want to take environmental and social concerns into their purchasing decisions, but only 1 to 10% actually follow through with that. And what they ultimately said last night on the point of research is that exact question: how do we find out what makes a consumer buy more environmentally friendly, because that is the question. And at the moment, I think the majority of people just simply don't care. And it's not caring because they don't have those morals and they don't have that belief system. It's just there is so much more that they are considering on a day-to-day basis that doesn't factor. And so I think the role of a brand is to, just as Ridhwana just said, those things are happening and the products are better. And it's not a song and dance about you're doing something great for the environment. It's just that these products are available, and it is something that that you can buy that isn't too expensive. And on that point, just what Jess was saying as well about the simple facts, what I'm trying to do, and I'm not quite getting there yet, but on my page, I'm trying to show that exactly there are simple ways that you can be more sustainable, like looking at the labels and seeing that it's made in South Africa. Great, that's a check. That's already more sustainable because there are fewer emissions to bringing that product to the shop. And then you look at your fabrics, and maybe that fabric is either something that will biodegrade or is made in a way that has less impact. So all of those things, I think it's almost like both have to come into play, like the education of consumers, but we're not going to get through to everyone. And then the brands also have to take responsibility. So just as everyone said, I think stakeholder chain, it's everyone. The whole community has to play its part.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and even just to add, I understand what the ladies are saying, but truthfully speaking is the fact that currently on the market, the gap is that we can design all we want, but as long as we don't engage the consumer, we will never understand what is it that the consumer needs. The point being that people are shopping clothes because, and it goes to what Caroline as well is saying, they're shopping clothes because of their personal needs. There's no relationship with I'm shopping clothes because I'm trying to be sustainable, or I'm shopping clothes because I'm trying to save the world. It's purely selfish. So if we find a system of how to take them out of that whole selfishness and bring awareness in terms of this is what you're doing when you're buying this top, or this is what you're doing when you're discarding it this way, then perhaps that's when you can start having a much more better relationship with consumers and their clothing. But currently, for us to hope to, because we do have sustainable brands, yes, they're expensive, but people are not buying them, or a small marginal amount of people are buying those garments. So why are they not buying those garments? Is it because they're not aware that it's sustainable, or is it because they're expensive, or is it because it's just not the style that they prefer? Or fast fashion is so fast that you're just on a high with whatever that is coming out and you'd rather go that way. So I'm leaning towards more of the idea of we currently have a gap on the market, and that's where we really need to figure out what do people really want, or what do people really love to wear.
Thank you for that, Jess. So you raised something that I've had extensive discussions about this with a sustainability professional, and she works in the corporate space, sustainability for corporates. So what the point that we were discussing was, how do we make corporate brands, like the big corporate brands, start caring? Because they are in business for one reason, right? To make a profit. And the comments they make, gosh, so like whenever you make a comment about, don't you think you should be going this way, a bit more sustainable this way? Their answers are, no, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm in this business to make money. Don't tell me about saving the earth. And my thoughts were maybe we're not having the right conversations with these people. Like, we should not be saying, do this because you want to save the earth. That we need to be having conversations to make them realize that actually there's something in it for you as well. There are opportunities in this whole thing. We're not saying save the earth, save the children, or save the communities. Look at what the opportunities are. And I think maybe that's where sustainability conversations need to start going, so that people can start caring, because then it's like when you ask them to care, then it's like, no, I don't have time to care. I need to survive, So yeah, thank you so much for that, Jess. Carlin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say it also comes back to habit so much. one of my first days working, I went to an industrial site, and back then, 14 years ago, we were trying to get the managers on site to separate their oily gloves from their lunch rubbish. And we said they're two different bins. And I remember an elderly man saying to me, but for 40 years, I have put everything in the same dustbin. Why? Why now must I separate it? And it was just that selfish, lazy, but why? What's it going to do attitude? And that I've seen throughout my career. Even to my own departments, I know I'm throwing them under the bus, but I tried to run a program to say, let's replace one plastic item with another. Please email me and tell me what you're doing. And it was like drawing blood from a stone. And they are aware of the legal impacts, the actual impacts. They are informed, and they struggled. So it's also that habit. And as Jess says, once we can tap into how to get them to stop thinking just about themselves and their wardrobe, and that they can still dress beautifully. We're not taking that away from anyone. You can still make money. The corporates, we're still making money, but it's just be creative, be in, use some technology and find a way.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Carlin. Before I move on to the next question, if anyone would like to add a final thought to this question, please go ahead. Okay, awesome. So then the next question that I would have for you is, what are the most underexplored opportunities in the sustainable textiles and apparel sector? So when we look at the entire value chain and we're asking people to now start looking for alternatives, what are the opportunities in this? And the ones that are mostly underexplored at the moment? I'll start with you, Jess. Well, I'm seeing you all jumbled around, so like it's not even in any order anymore, not like the previous one. So please go ahead.
I mean, for me, I thought about this, and I think I think education. I feel like I'm simplifying things today. I think education is really just key. And education from the brands, education from stakeholders, education from us as community, teaching each other. Women talk about clothes all the time, the whole day. We need to just start talking about, sustainability, environmentalism, and all those things. I think when you look at it from a retail point of view, just simple things and I think Colleen mentioned that as well, just changing up your garment labels, educating people and showing them that this is a special garment and what makes it special and where does it come from, and what kind of materials were used on that garment. So once you start, I think retail is not doing enough in that space in terms of taking that opportunity and diving into it. I also think that, things as simple as just making people be aware the problem with clothes, the problem we have with clothes. I think so many people are not aware, even in 2022, the problem we have with our clothes, and why it's just such a complex issue, and the role of what they can play and small things that they can do. So I think that people who are selling clothing, who have whatever accessories and whatever it is in the fashion space, I think they need to be doing more education, whether it's as simple as having functions in their establishments, just like informational, whatever, drink and sip kind of thing. I think we really need to bring it lower to the people instead of talking all the time about sustainability, from an just this executive level, where people we almost lose them. So I think that some of the things that I'm seeing in my space is that once you start bringing down fashion and the fashion lingo to people on that level, people really start reciprocating and they understand, so I am not seeing the difference between talking about style the whole day and where I got my clothes or whatever as a stylist to people versus teaching them about, and do you know that this is what happens to your clothes? And do you know the problem with polyester? And do you know all those type of things? So very simplified, but I really think that when you do really think about it, education is so intricate. So depending on what space you're in, you can really just start educating. And I think that's like one of the amazing work that Ridhwana just mentioned in terms of, setting that education that she's trying to do with businesses that she spoke about when it comes to footwear, It sounds like it's something that you would think, oh, it's just too simple or whatever, but oh my gosh, it has so much power that we start talking about that and demystifying what sustainability is.
Thank you so much, Jess. Simplicity is key. The only way to get through to people is by simplifying things. I absolutely agree with that. Thank you very much. Ridhwana, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm not going to have a video on now because I've moved to mobile. Is that all right?
It's all right. I can
okay, cool.
Thank you.
Of all the questions that you said you were going to cover today, this is my favorite question, I have to say, because deep down inside, I'm an entrepreneur and I'll probably be one until the day I die. But I think that if you cannot show true value in where the money lies in an idea, no one jumps on board. I think that one of the greatest unexplored opportunities within the textile and apparel sector is the unexplored idea of microfactories. And when I talk about microfactories, I'm talking about little microfactories that are at the end of a waste stream, where whatever it is that is collected, so whether it is polyester, whether it is used footwear, with whatever, it doesn't matter what that waste stream is, and a waste stream can be anything. Sorry, to use your words, waste is a bad word, right? So we're gonna call it used resources.
Yes.
Wherever used resources end up, there is opportunity for it to be made into something else. And I love the idea of microfactories because if you have the possibility to, let's say, rethink about, let's say it's a used resource stream for bedding, for example, right? And it's all sort of different types of materials, different types of stuffings, different types of everything. You've got an entrepreneur who's got ideas on how to beneficiate that. The entrepreneur doesn't necessarily have to go out looking for his or her resources. The resources come to you. So the chances of that resource ending up in a landfill is now minimal because you've been able to separate it. You've kept it out of the dustbin. You've understood how to get your logistics in a row. You're going to get all this material to you. At the end of that waste stream, you've got the ability to, I don't know, make dog beds with it or whatever, turn it into new bedding. It doesn't really matter. So that's the one idea, which is micro factories. And of course, I'm literally just glossing over it. I think that the idea of micro factories is a very, it's an intricate idea. It needs a lot of explaining and it needs a lot of thinking through, but it definitely does have teeth in terms of making people actual money. The second idea that I think is really interesting in the underexplored sort of opportunity category is turning old clothes into new clothes. And this primarily I'm pointing fingers at retailers. Because the idea of once the clothes have left my store, it's no longer my problem, it's a problematic idea. Retailers can inherently beneficiate from the value that they put into the resources that was made for that particular garment. And in resources here, I'm talking about the materials and the components and the buttons and the whatever for it. If the retailers don't necessarily want the idea of remanufacturing, then the idea of remanufacturing can be taken up by tailors and fashion designers, understanding that sometimes garments have so much value in terms of like they're vintage or it was designer at one stage and it's no longer like desirable item now, but the material is still beautiful. The quality is still great. It's just very dated. How do you rejig it to make it look amazing? Now, there are a few brands in SA. I totally forgot the one. I was just literally referencing it for a chat I was doing with the students from Inkscape, where they take vintage garments, particularly, and they turn them into really, really cool items that are gender neutral. So this garment now has so much more value because being gender neutral, not easily going to date, number one, and number two is it's not easily going to find its way into a landfill because it has multiple uses, right? So there's the idea of using existing textile, and for me, I think that is it's a big challenge for people in the space to understand because it's a whole lot cheaper and easier to just go to a fabric store or import your fabric on the roll. That's the simple truth, and that's why we are always at an impasse when we're talking about textile circularity. It's simply cheaper to buy a new textile, right? And then I think the third idea that is worth exploring, and I think that in this country is rather underdeveloped, is the space that you're playing in, Pretty, which is textile recycling. And I'm not necessarily talking about the recycling, which is the mechanical recycling, which takes it back into just fluff and thread and that sort of thing. I'm talking about the actual chemical recycling, the ability to turn fabric into fabric again. If we can get the recipe right in this country, we're winning. So I think that there needs to be a huge push. And obviously, you know, when we talk about innovation like that, there's so much money that needs to go into it. Of course, there are companies in Europe that are doing incredible things, but we don't have Europe's money, right? We've got money that we've got in this country. And I mean, okay, so when we talk about, firstly, like the COP27, in fact, all of the COPs are just literally talk shops. And the truth is that if that money that was given, or at least promised to developing countries to help mitigate the effects of climate change, don't filter down to something as important as chemical recycling of textile, then I can safely say that we definitely are not looking in the right directions when it comes to the fashion industry, which is huge. Sure, it's not the energy industry. I completely understand that. But it is huge, because for as long as there will be people who need covering, is for as long as there'll be fashion, and for as long as there'll be waste that accompanies that fashion. So I really do think that those are my three sort of top underdeveloped ideas within this sector. And I think that there's actual genuine money to be made there. But more importantly than the money to be made there is the change that will come from innovating in this particular space.
Thank you very much, Ridhwana. So one thing that you said, the first point that you mentioned, the idea of micro factories, we are challenged to actually implementing that, because it is one way to create not just income opportunities, but to practically implement the circular economy, right? Because when you've got micro factories in different communities, you don't have products and services and raw materials being shipped halfway across the world in order to manufacture or create anything. So if you take people that are within a community and have them do that for you, and it's for a company that is like 50 or 100 kilometers away, how much of a difference would that make if we implemented that all around the 9 provinces of the country? So that for me was a key takeaway. Thank you so much, Ridhwana. Carlin says, Jess, let's take a roadshow to high schools. I love that idea. Can I join? And Carlin also saying, Ridhwana, 100% agreed. And I've seen this opportunity in numerous areas. I know a few companies doing this. I would love to use markets like, I'd love to use markets like Karma's. So much to discuss on this point. Yes, there's a lot to discuss. Upcycling, yes, the creative aspects in this are endless. And there's Tebe Magugu's last collection focused on the use of vintage / old existing clothes. And yeah, textile recycling is massive, underexplored at the moment. If anyone would like to anything, please go ahead.
I wanted to add just something on that. So that
sorry.
Sorry. Just on the textile manufacturing, like an example, a friend of mine who does a leather company, she was saying in Italy, they take the offcuts and they grind it into a fine dust, and then they add it to latex, and they can use this. She actually orders this product from Italy, and she said, this is such a gold mine, and we have numerous companies who produce leather goods. If we could pull those resources together, that in itself is a massive recycled textile that we could focus on. So there's so many opportunities like that. And yeah, just as I've said in my comments, fully agree with Jess and Ridhwana. So I can't really add anything else to that. But yeah, just echo what everyone says.
Thank you so much. I think Oscar was on just now, and I was going to ask him to comment. But Oscar, if you can hear me, please go ahead and add your thoughts, if you would like, about what the most underexplored opportunities are. Okay, I think we've lost Oscar. Yomi, do you have any thoughts to add on the underexplored opportunities?
Yes, I do. I also totally agree with what Ridhwana said, and but then I'll go with Jess this time as well and keep it so simple. There's an area where I think it's existing currently, but I don't think a lot of people patronize that. It's rentals and of pre-loved items. So when you, I mean, even in the UK, there's this Selfridges, they have like a pre-loved section. So it's getting onto the mainstream, but it's not. I'm still finding it difficult to, and I'm speaking for myself now, to go to a Selfridges and say, okay, so maybe this high-end designer outfit that was like £1,000 or something like that is now £300. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it's come down a great deal, but I could also get that on a sale if it comes a massive sale, you know. So it's also the education behind it, and for me, it's also a case of, okay, so have these clothes been really cleaned? Have they been, you know, dry? I mean, who wore it? You know, how many? You know, so those are personal examples I'm giving, and I said to myself, okay, Yomi, you would go to a hotel and sleep on a hotel bed. Someone else slept on that bed. The bed sheet was cleaned, it was laundered, and you know. So talking to myself, there's advocacy, there's educating people. Yes, we can take it to the high school, but and get them young, but also we as adults need to get our minds around it that, hey, this isn't bad. And there's also the cultural taboo of, oh, you're wearing someone else's clothes. Oh, no. So maybe if we try and have it like, if we say, okay, the really expensive high-end haute couture clothes, you know, I won't buy that normally. No, I can't afford it. But then if it's pre-loved and I have this really lovely event to go for, I'm like, oh, that's the outfit. Yes, it can be on a rental. It can be, you know, me just purchasing it outright. But that's an area we really need to talk about, really need to explain to people that really it's not bad. You know, so it can be done. You know, so that's just my contribution as well.
Thank you so much. Carlin, do you have anything to add?
I'm butting in again. Yomi, you reminded me, and that was, so on this discussion last night, the founder of By Rotation in the UK. So she has started a platform and it's on an app, and that's exactly what they do. You, yourself, an individual, can rent out items that you have to others. And it's really growing. And she said just the information that they are taking from individuals, because they can get that information on their buying habits, what things they like to purchase, the demographic of people renting clothes versus those buying clothes and renting them to others. And the point that they also made was that we have to shift and see fashion and clothing as an investment. And you can see it very much in the luxury goods space, where a handbag that you pay, I still can't come to terms with it, 30,000 Rand and up for one handbag. That handbag an individual can purchase and rent out. And she gave the example that there are individuals in London who are making £3,000 a month just from renting out their high-end goods. And the focus, as you said, is it's getting your head around. And I've bought a few secondhand items, but I'm also still getting there on the, you know, who's worn it, has it been cleaned properly. But the way she explained it is that it becomes a community. It's a community of women or men who have a passion about clothing, and they look after their clothes, so they take confidence that others in their community will, and they have a similar frame, they have a similar style. And she said ultimately her goal is to have it where you can walk down the road and find someone who is the same size as you and just knock on their door and say, can I borrow that dress, obviously pay you for it, that you have online. So it's building that community, and that was just incredible. And I think we can definitely take that before she brings it here to South Africa and Africa broadly. Maybe we can create our own technology platforms like that. And as you started with, you said it is an African thing to hand down clothes, to share clothes. So I don't think it's a stretch. So I fully agree with that.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Can I just chip in here a little bit? So I think that when we talk about circular economy and the different business models that exist within circular economy, rental does seem to be the most popular one, right? And I think that the problem that we have is that rental right now is only relegated to the very sort of like high-end products. We're talking about leather handbags, we're talking about like really, really precious vintage, or we're talking about wedding gowns and ball gowns and that sort of thing, right? When we talk about the average person, like let's talk about, for example, my kid's primary school teacher, right? She doesn't necessarily have a need to hire vintage, or she doesn't necessarily have a need to hire a ball gown every now and again or whatever. So for me, there's limitations within rental that I find it hard to wrap my mind around as to how can rental actually scale. So there are a bunch of rental sites that have popped up. Like there's one in Cape Town, I think it's called Style something, I can't really remember, but they hire out like outfits for a week. So you can get like an office outfit for a week or whatever, it is kind of cool. But when you look at the cost of rental, for example, from that particular company versus just buying the item yourself and then owning it, for average South Africans, it is more appealing to just have ownership of Style Rotate. Thanks, Caroline. That's the one I was talking about. So the idea of ownership in the context of South Africa, I think, is really important. There are things that we're happy to rent, like we could rent out tools. We can rent, I've even seen that there's like a curtain rental company, which I think is really awesome, because how much wear can your curtains totally get unless you're like me and you have cats? But the thing is that how do you scale it to make sense? How do you scale it in a way that, like, for example, would we ever talk about Mr. Price having a rental? No, because Mr. Price's garments are made to, and I've name dropped here because I just wanted to help identify the issue with rental on a scale, right? Is that Mr. Price's garments are not made to endure. So after maybe like 3 rentals, the thing's fallen apart and you've literally missed the point of rental, right? Because the idea is to be able to keep that item in rotation for as long as possible and gain as much value from it for as long as possible. So if businesses are wanting to look at the rental model, then once more, I'll go back to design. It changes in design for endurance, design for the fact that it needs to live again and again and again, multiple times. 500 times is pretty much ideal, I would think, before a garment can be put to rest. So yeah, if anyone actually has examples of rental at scale that they can share, that would be amazing.
Awesome, thank you so much. So you've just reminded me of something, back to a point that Jess made when we spoke about the stakeholders, right? And one of the things that Jess mentioned was education. So now when we go to, all right, what are the underexplored opportunities, and we talk about rental, and this is where in a case of the clothing that is made to last, Ridhwana, right? There's an opportunity there to drive consumer behavior. There's an opportunity to come up with creative ways of driving consumer behavior. And that's just my thought on that. Thank you so much. So if anybody would like to add a thought to the, please go ahead. Thank you.
I fully agree with Ridhwana. And I think we spoke about this before, Ridhwana, fully agree. Because then ultimately it only solves clothing problem for a certain part of the community or certain kind of a wearer, not for all of us. And what we're trying to figure out is that, how do we help my aunt? How do we help my grandmother? How do we help my nanny? All those people need to be able to get that, that kind of access. And I think we spoke about it in the beginning, where the system needs to look at everybody else and not just a certain kind of people. And I think that another point of one of the areas that we seem to have forgotten about is the repair market, and the repair market can play such a significant role in teaching people that whole mindset that we used to have back in the day of repairing your clothes. So if something is not, the way you bought it or of great quality, you need to fix that. But people don't like that. We are all a convenient society where we just want to move on and keep it going. I don't have time to just go find someone else to sort out my button. Or, I remember in school, we were taught how to put on a button before, but I'm not sure if my niece knows that. I'm not sure if my young cousin knows that. Those are the things that were part of, the skill setting that they were teaching us. But I also think that once we get to a space where the systems are perfected, somebody's thinking beyond just the system, I think the idea of collaborative consumption can really work, where you have, I think Ridhwana make an example about, that particular brand, but you can have, and this is where design comes in. You have that brand making like really amazing, endured kind of design that will last for a long time. But then you have a system where anybody is able to bring back their garments and being able to we all rotate this garment where it's part of the system. So every retail has that system automatically where you can, I bought this top and I know after 2 years I can bring it back as long as it still has, I don't know, whatever checkings that people want to do, their tag or whatever it is to check if it's their product. And then use that to almost change or give access to everyone else, knowing that you are able to come back and bring back that garment. I don't know, the specifications in terms of how long, and some people are not necessarily great with caring for their garments and what would be, who would have access, who wouldn't. But I think in the ideal world, the idea about collaborative consumption when it comes to specifically on worn clothes, I think it can go a long way. And when I say collaborative consumption, I don't want to make it sound like thrifting, because I feel like in my mind, collaborative consumption is different. Like Airbnb is different, Uber is different. This is not just like, it's different from I'm renting a car from, is it Heads or those renting car spaces. That is like a model that is meant to just cut down on whether it's fuel, whether it's gas emissions, whatever it is. But I feel like when I say collaborative consumption, I'm seeing in my mind a system where I've bought my clothes, after a year, I can take it back. I can either have the option to swap, or I can either have the option to put it in a bin, and then what Ridhwana said, and then they recycle it and then make something else of that fabric, and then we move on, versus making clothing into something else, making that fabric, making it into curtains. That is for a different person who wants to develop a different kind of business. But I want to know when I've left the store that, I can come back, whether I have a wedding or whether I'm going on holiday, I can just come back and swap a few things. And then it rotates like that. But don't ask me about the specifics of how they would charge and how they would do this and all those things. But I think there's space for collaborative consumption if we're speaking about where are the gaps.
Yeah, thank you very much. So throughout the entire value chain, there's such a huge amount of opportunities where it would need like a breaking down, right? Like just to create the full picture of a life cycle of a garment, for example, and just show people how many opportunities are at each stage. Yeah, thank you very much for that point, Jess. Would anyone like to add anything to the point?
I would like to add that, yes, there are. Everybody has been given, really brilliant contributions. But then I would like to pick on what Jess just said, collaborative consumption. And you would always realize that even at this stage of trying to build a very relevant ecosystem, there are still different classes of people. And so there'll be different needs at every point in time. So yes, my nanny might not need the hot couture outfit, my boss might need something else. But so how we can, and then sometimes there's some clothes, Mr. Price, when you buy it, it's not gonna last. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, but you buy it at that price because you're just gonna get a few wears out of it, and then you're gonna do something else with it. It could just be a rag to clean your shoes at home as well, something like that. But what I'm saying is, at each point, let's explore options of where we can plug in this thought at every point of this value chain. And repairing to, at some point, it depends on the value of what. If I buy a Mr. Price, I'm definitely not going to repair it. There's no point. I'm probably going to repair more than I bought. The cost of repairing is going to be probably higher than the cost of purchase. So let's find a way where everybody there can be options for individuals along the value chain. Is just what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Yumi. That is a great point. So different people across different classes have different needs, and I think that is one of the things to take into account. Thank you so much for that point, Yumi. If anyone would like to add anything to the previous question, this question. Okay, then we move on. Now, the next question that I have for you, everyone, is what is required to achieve a truly sustainable and circular textile industry in Africa? Now, bearing in mind the fact that, I've seen people in the northern parts of the world who've already implemented circular economy practices, right? And questions around their practices are, is this sustainable? So you're going circular, but is your circular business model sustainable? And then, my thoughts around the fact that the circular economy is sustainable, my thoughts around that got destroyed completely. Therefore, my question is, what is required to achieve a truly sustainable and circular textile industry in Africa? I will start with you, Ridhwana.
Cool. So in order to, I think, truly achieve this kind of nirvana, you need everyone on board. And when I say everyone, I literally mean all the stakeholders that are decision makers within governments, policy making, legislation, business, consumers, everyone has to be on board. And that is such a mammoth task. Like, is it even doable? These are the kind of questions that I ask myself when I'm feeling really blue about being in the circular economy. Is it really doable? And I think that slowly it is, but we don't have time for slowly, right? We're already on track for, what is it? We're already at like 1.2 or is it 1.5 degrees warming? I can't remember. I just read the stat the other day. And we're not supposed to go as fast as we're going in terms of the heating of our planet, but we're not slowing down with anything. Business hasn't slowed down. Extraction of fossil fuels hasn't slowed. Nothing has slowed down. So if we have to make some changes, it's going to be harsh and some people are going to get hurt, and we have to be okay with that. And I think that we're at the point where society is saying some of us won't actually be okay with that. Even though it's for the greater good, we're not going to be okay with that. So just leave us be, and whatever happens, happens. I've had this conversation with people in my community where I've said, are there possibility, is there a possibility for us to maybe have like a food sharing system or this kind of system or that kind of system? And it's like, but why? It's so inconvenient, I'm happy to buy my cucumbers wrapped in plastic, and I'm happy to do this. And we've always done it this way. And I think that quite possibly the most destructive phrase that the human mind has ever thought about was, we've always done it this way. I hate it with an absolute passion because it really is the full stop for innovation. So I think that the short answer for your question is we truly need everyone on board, from the stakeholders within government to the stakeholders within business to the consumers that we want to buy our products. Every single person has to be on board. And I don't think that we should disparage the tiny steps that we make towards changing, because if that tiny steps are taken by 8 billion people, it becomes a huge movement, right? And I think that we shouldn't discredit the amount of power communities can have. And I find that, like, specifically also on LinkedIn, like, a lot of us are just talking in echo chambers about circular economy, about sustainability. We're not talking to people on the street. Like, you know, what Caroline said about take this as a roadshow to high school. I am so in with that. I literally have all teaching material for that. And I've started doing actually, like, I've gone one step like before that. So I'm like at a sort of like a play school level, teaching children how to understand circular economy when they're like 4 or 5 years old, because it's going to start from there. We're going to see true change, but true change that is sustainable in terms of the idea remaining consistent as generations grow. It's not starting with you and I. It's starting with kids and then moving forward, like into university level and that sort of thing. So it's yeah, that's I think where we need to find true change from, is like, it's got to come from, it's a top-down approach, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yeah, collaborative efforts is something crucial to this entire thing. And then somebody said to me the other day, but have you considered that other people just don't want to do it? They don't want to be involved. They don't care about this whole thing of you wanting to change the world. So yeah. And like, free will is another thing, right? You've got to let people do what they want to do. So it's very interesting.
Exactly. And I think that when we talk about ourselves as Africans, you know, having us as a continent, we're responsible for about 3% of emissions, right? Yet here we are, disproportionately affected by all the mess that is going on with the climate, right? And then we've got all the powers that be in the global north saying, you must do better, enough with the emissions now, but like, we're not culpable here in this whole thing. So when the messages filter down to the average person in South Africa, in Uganda, in wherever on the street, and then the message is, you have to do better, and you have to lessen your impact, and you have to lessen your footprint. And you're like, well, how do I actually do that? What do I as an individual need to do? What in my capacity is available to me when, for example, I am forced to buy my soap powder in a tiny little sachet because that's all I can afford? So that be the consequences if my sachet can't get recycled, right? Or I have to buy my eggs from a supermarket because I can't keep chickens in my neighborhood, for example. And I'm forced to buy machine-bred eggs, and that's not me. I'm just highlighting an example, right? I'm forced to buy these things. I have to buy meat because, in essence, I don't actually have access to fresh fruit and vegetable every single day. Culturally, for example, I need to have meat every day, and it's important for my diet. So how do you expect people to make these changes when we were not culpable for the damage in the first place? And now we're sitting with the ill effects of it, but we have been fed a system of consumption that we have no control over any longer. When we allowed fast fashion brands into our country, we said to the consumer, you now have no choice in what you want to wear. We're going to tell you what to wear. So here, force feed fashion into your faces. I mean, I can't even remember a time when there wasn't H&M and Zara and all the guys that are just like literally churning out fashion by the gajillion. I don't remember a time before that, yet it existed. So we need a push from like literally from everywhere. And I really do think that that's the only way that we're going to make any sort of headway.
Thank you so much for that, Ridhwana. Yeah, so that is a great point. Ellen says, also to Jess's point, education and awareness will play a role in transforming the mindset of everyone on board, starting with corporates. Carlin says, totally, Ridhwana, creatures of habit and convenience. We need to get to the youth who are still forming habits. Ellen added another point and said, true change that remains consistent as generations grow. Well said, Ridhwana. One last point from Carlin. She says, I love that, Ridhwana. I've done similar work on the Constitution for primary schools. Please, we have a goal for 2023. Yay! Please don't leave me behind. I'm in there too. Jess.
Yeah, I wanted to go after Ridhwana because I have to excuse myself at 2:30. I'm jumping to another call.
Okay.
But thank you so much for the invite. This was really lovely, and it was lovely again being on. It's always lovely to be on the call with Ridhwana, and Colleen. Always enjoy talking to her. And Yumi, it was really lovely to meet you. So in closing, for me, I think it's a perfect point that I'm making, especially after what Ridhwana said. I think what, some of the notes that I've put in for myself was the fact that, nothing can ever really be sustainable to a point where nothing shifts, nothing breaks. Life is not that perfect. Once we achieve the whole sustainable mission or movement, then something else will pop up. I feel like such as life. That's just how, I don't know, that's the nature of human being, or the cycle of life, and I think that industries shouldn't necessarily aim to be sustainable. I think you do what you can, obviously as time goes on, then you want to be able to measure and see, have you really moved, or, your idea of doing what you can is still as small as little. The idea is you do what you can and then you move from there, and then until you get there eventually. So I think creating a conscious industry, I think that is what's key. I don't necessarily think that we need to be aiming to create a sustainable and secular textile industry. I think the first step for me is conscious industry, like whatever industry you're in, whether you're in the food, whether you're in fashion, whether you're in automobile, wherever you're working, people need to start understanding the sector that I'm in. How does it impact, my surroundings, And then I truly believe what secular movement is really long-term. I think circular economy is long-term. I think that is our our roadmap, that shows us we're going in the right direction. I think that's how we measure ourselves. That's our campus in terms of where we're trying to get to. And I think that industries shouldn't necessarily be put under pressure to be 100% sustainable. And it goes back to at some point where Ridhwana said something to the effect of, we have to recognize that this machine has been running for a long time. It has been running for so long that to aim to change it within 5 years or 2 years is unrealistic. So I think conscious industry, whether you are the guy down the road selling whatever clothing, or even the people who are doing thrifting or whatever it is, I think consciousness is important. And I think we can learn a lot from the food movement in terms of how they started bringing that whole consciousness in terms of what we're eating, where we get our food, where you're buying your food, and how much food we still have in the world, and what people can do, whether it's, having a veggie garden just in your backyard. I think the fashion industry is exactly like that. If we take lessons from how much they've accomplished so far, they still have problems. They still have, issues about just scarcity, on certain things because of the weather, because of the droughts that we're experiencing around Africa or wherever it is in the world. So I don't want to digress, but I think that circularity for me is something that it's a guideline. It's where we need to be aiming to, because once we clean up the whole market, then we need to now start finding something that just continuously just, moves the wheel. But I think that nothing can ever be 100% sustainable. And I don't think we should be having a conversation on that level. I think we're far, far, far from that. Nothing can ever be that sustainable, And I think one of the points that I've also written down here is the fact that, and I think we spoke about it earlier on, Africa has always been sustainable. And what we need to be looking at is what, just doing that whole SWOT analysis. What are we strong at and what are we not strong at? And then we work from there. I don't think necessarily that we want to keep what has been working. We want to progress what has been working, but we also know that we're not necessarily 100% in certain areas. And then we raise the bar in those areas. So thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the valuable points, all the valuable expertise that you shared with us. Jess, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Carlin?
Bye, Jess.
Oh, shame, Yomi, you're welcome to go. Do you want to? Oh, no. So I wanted to jump on again, and I fully agree. As usual, I think we're all on the same page with a lot of these questions, and with the whole I think one big thing for me, and especially with trying to get the message across and educate people on my Instagram page, is to avoid the eco guilt, which I learned is a thing, in, just as we say, educating and trying to open people's eyes without making them feel bad about it, because we're going to scare people off far easier than trying to help people like come over to just looking at things from a different perspective. And something else that was said, and the word sustainability is just, it's thrashed out there, and there's so many different meanings for different people, and the EU, the guidelines that they're enforcing, what they're trying to move to is not, so rather than advertising we are sustainable, we are green, it's more just being factual about what you actually are. We give our employees a living wage, and we have a management education system within our business. So it's just putting the facts in, and yes, it's not exciting and it's not sexy, as one of the women last night said, but that is far better than claiming to be something that you're not, because greenwashing is the thing as well, and people are starting to hone in on companies who say what they're doing and then they aren't actually doing that. And so I think it's, just as everyone said, a collaboration, and I think people from different sectors, different professions, different experiences, and the African context, that's what I've also been trying to sort of focus on. It's hard to understand, and I think a lot of you who are on this panel would have more insights than even I do. I've just tried to research on Google on these various things, and I see the EU and America, and that's not the African context. And I would love to find more research and more information on what we need for our continent, what we're doing right, where else we can go, and what our consumers, what our people need. And I think there is a lot that the West should be doing for us. I read really interesting articles on just the, I'm going to forget the term exactly, but it's essentially how the West have impacted us from an energy perspective, from just their fashion and just sort of pushing it onto Africa. Reparations, I think it stems, or it goes into reparations, and how the West should actually be giving us money to try and sort these things out, which I do agree with to a point, but I think we also have to start, because if we wait for them, we're going to wait a long time. So I think we have to do what we can ourselves, and we're creative, and we have so much going for Africa. So I'm excited, and especially speaking to other individuals like all of you on this call, I know that there's hope, and I'm really excited for the future.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I will join. Oh, sorry, Pretty.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you, Carlin. Please go ahead, Yomi.
You know, Colin, thank you once again. And Jess, you know, you spoke my mind, and I'll just put it in one sentence. We need to educate for a more responsible production and consumption pattern of behavior. And, you know, rather than saying, oh, let's save the world, like someone said earlier, because you'll probably be like, oh, what's my business? Yes, I live here, but what's, you know, let's appeal to the better nature. Let's just do better. That's just it. Let's just do better. We're not trying to be superheroes, we're just trying to be better. That's all.
Thank you.
Can I
Yes.
pop in here with something? So I totally agree with what everyone is saying. Circular-ish is better than full circular if that's all that you can do right now. But the danger in that is if we do not sit with, you know, if we're not sort of like more forceful with regards to greenwashing and laxity from big business especially, is that circular-ish is all it will remain for them. And then we as consumers will still be bound to buying rubbish that they keep on churning out because we have no alternative to it. So circular-ish is always going to be the way to sort of head towards, and the full end result needs to be better than that. So I am firmly in agreement with what the other panelists have said here, but I just want us to not stop putting pressure on big businesses and on policymakers and on legislators that can drive true and meaningful change. That's my bit.
Thank you very much. Accountability, right? So even though we might not aspire to the same goals and so on and so forth, and not see things the same way, but the thing is, we're all walking this earth. And how are we keeping each other accountable as to the way we operate. So how are we keeping each other accountable that way? I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much. You ladies are true experts, and I look forward to learning from you and collaborating with you so that we can achieve a sustainable textile industry in South Africa and Africa, no matter how long it takes us. Let's just start. Let's start, all right? If final thoughts, if anyone would like to add more final thoughts, I see, Yomi, you added, thank you, everyone. I got to leave the call now. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure, Yomi. Thank you for coming through. I really appreciate you, and we'll talk soon, right? Enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, so on this note, I think we can close off. The recording of the session will be on our YouTube channel, which I'm starting. I'm starting a Zero Waste TV channel, which currently has only 3 subscribers, but that's okay. So I'm gonna load all the conversations from this week on that channel, and I'll essentially be using that as a form of activating circularity and activating actions and finding resources, tools, experts, whatever it takes, so that we can start taking action. Thank you very much, ladies. Carolyn, you'd like to add something?
Yes, no, just thank you so much for including me. I am very excited for collaborations as well with all of you, and I think we have a lot to look forward to next year. I will be your 4th subscriber and try and get more subscribers for you. So just thank you, thank you, thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Same here. I just want to say thank you as well. It was lovely to meet you, Colin, and the rest of the panelists, and I look forward to the recording.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Ciao. Bye-bye.